say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all once again? We would like to begin this interaction by laying a few foundations that we know will crop up in these interactions over and over again. And by building upon those foundations so that you can know that every experience you have in your physiological life is, generally speaking and sometimes very specifically, the result of the definitions and belief systems that have been ingrained within your consciousness from the time you were small children. And that these belief systems and definitions ingrained in your consciousness are utterly, completely, totally, and absolutely responsible for the kinds and quality of experiences that you have in your day-to-day physiological existence. That there is no real physiological existence apart from your definitions of what you expect it to be in your strongest and most profound definitions of what you believe is possible for that reality to be. Many of you have been hearing these ideas that you create your reality. This has become, as you would say, part and parcel of your metaphysical nomenclature. Almost a catchphrase now in your society. You create your reality. You create your reality. Oh, what does that mean? Very, very few of you actually understand the mechanism through which this occurs. Allow us to explain, because we also understand that in your language, and in many of the languages on your planet, there can be words that are confusing and misleading from time to time simply because they do not necessarily contain nor possess any particular degree of precision about what they are defining. Such as the word create. You create your reality. The idea really, perhaps a little bit more precisely defined, would be as follows. Yes, in essence, generally, you do create your physiological reality. But, again, more accurately, everything is the result of vibration of consciousness, frequency of energy. Everything is a frequency, a vibration. This is this and that is that, only because this is a particular vibration and that is a different vibration. It's all one and the same energy. It's all one and the same material, so to speak. It's all one and the same consciousness, totally homogeneous on one level, but diversified due to the different patterns of frequency, vibrations, and resonance which occur within that one homogeneous medium of consciousness. So, the way you create, so to speak, any particular reality is through the frequency that you give off collectively as an individual and collectively as a society. Whatever frequency you are operating on, whatever, shall we say in your language, bandwidth you are operating on, of course, is the program that you get, just as you do through the analogy of your radio and television technologies. You know that if you are, as you say, tuned to a particular station, you do not really expect to get another program other than what is on that station. Any bleed-through, which may happen from time to time, is usually the result of what you recognize as, so to speak, an imprecise tuning. But the idea really is that the kind of reality you get, the kind of experiences you attract, and attract is the key word, more precisely than create, is the result of the kind of frequency you are giving off, because what you call physical reality is really inside you. Not really out there, as you say. It is a mirror. It is a reflection of the idea of yourself expressed in a particular format of physiological terminology. Like a mirror, a glass mirror, that contains nothing but reflects everything. You recognize that there is nothing out there. It is just a reflection. Everything that's happening seemingly out there is just a reflection in some symbolic form, one way or another, of what's going on in here, in your totality, of how you see yourself, how you think of yourself, how you behave, what you define yourself to be. So, it can be simply understood from that if you wish to see a change take place in the reflection in the mirror, you don't attempt to reach out and distort the reflection, change the reflection. No. You change yourself, and thus automatically the reflection must, by definition, change. It has no choice. It has no choice at that point. Same with your shadow. Physical reality is but the shadow of the soul. When you wish to change the shape of your shadow upon the ground, upon the wall, you do not reach out and attempt to stretch or smear your shadow on the wall. You know it is coming from you. So you change the shape of your bodily form, and of course, the shadow follows suit. It has no choice. It has no choice. So when you get a handle, as you say, on the frequency upon which you are operating, which you do by getting in touch with the definitions of life that you have been raised to believe, and you change those definitions, thereby changing the frequency, you automatically change the physical reality and all the different kinds of circumstances going on within it, because it has no choice. It has no choice. It's a reflection of you, of what you believe is most possible, most likely, and or what you fear is most possible and most likely. Don't forget that. It is the strongest thing you believe in, and sometimes in your society, no offense, it's a fear rather than a joy. So the idea, to go back to the basic, fundamental euphemism, you create your reality, can be understood a little bit more clearly as an issue of attraction, an issue of like attracts like, an issue of frequency, an issue of bandwidth. Like an antenna, you do not create the reality. It already exists. It's already real. Whatever it is you desire in your life, whatever kind of life, whatever kind of reality you want, already exists, because everything already exists. You don't have to create it in the sense that you have to make it from scratch. You simply need to attract it. That's all. Attract it by making yourself more attractive to that reality by operating on the appropriate frequency, in the appropriate bandwidth. Then you can attract the accoutrements, the situations, the people, the circumstances, the opportunities, the synchronicities that go hand in hand with that description of reality that you say you want, because you are operating on that level, on that frequency. When you do operate on a particular frequency, you cannot get anything but the reality that is reflective, that is resonant to that particular frequency. So, if you find there are things going on in your life that you do not prefer, this is not a judgment, just an observation that there are things you would like to change, not through judging them, but through the recognition that they no longer represent your concept of yourself, you can do so. You can do so by changing your idea of yourself, getting in touch with why you have the idea of yourself you already do, finding out where that came from, and replacing it with another definition. Knowing as strongly as you had the first definition in place, knowing that the second definition will replace it automatically. When you know it has the equal potential to replace it. It will. And as soon as you replace it, as soon as you transform it, more precisely, from one definition into another, you will get the reality that goes hand in hand with that definition, just as certainly as you do get the radio or television program that goes hand in hand with the appropriate channel that you tune to. It is really simple physics, simple mechanics. It's really no more mysterious than that, even though we recognize that many of your metaphysical practices are surrounded and immersed in many different and confusing and sometimes seemingly self-contradictory rituals. It really is no more complex than what we have just described. Now, it is up to you as to how to get in touch, as to be willing to get in touch with why you are the way you are, and finding out that if there is some other way you would rather be, to give yourself permission to allow yourself to behave, to create the frequency of, the state of being of that reality, so you can attract that reality which already exists. Because you don't have to create it. It's already there. Everything already exists. Everything is one. You just get the reality. You get the aspect of the total reality you are on the wavelength of. That's all it is. That's all. So then, in the discussions that we will have with you this day of your time, more often than not, Allow yourself to see how this pattern emerges over and over and over again in the things that you share with us, in the questions that you have, in the observations that you make, that it all comes down to your definitions of life rather than the idea that life really is this way. Because life really isn't any way in particular until you define it to be so. Allow yourself the willingness, the freedom to stretch, to open up, to relax a little bit on your definitions. We understand that some of these patterns seem strongly ingrained. Well, that's just because you have been spoon-fed these patterns since birth, sometimes even before birth. You simply need to recognize the diet you have been on and decide to change what you put in your belief system. That's all. That's all. Sometimes this will really happen quite quickly just through a simple redefining of a term that opens up a new understanding of how to see that idea. For example, many of you, most of you, as we have come across in our conversation from time to time, will usually define the word doubt as a lack of trust. And you hear many metaphysicians and many different individuals and different sources of information saying, well, in order to change your reality, in order to create the reality you want, you have to trust 100% in that reality, or you won't get it. And we hear the collective moaning and groaning. And, how can you trust 100% of the time in something? There's always a little bit of doubt. No one can trust 100% of the time. It's not possible. Oh, what was that? But you see, it is only your definition of doubt that makes it seem so difficult, so impossible. When you define doubt as a lack of trust, certainly it seems near to impossible that you could have 100% trust and never a shred of doubt. But when you all of a sudden understand that doubt is a 100% trust in a definition you don't prefer, you recognize that you're trusting in 100% all the time. You are never not trusting in something. Otherwise, you wouldn't have an experiential reality. It's just an issue of what are you trusting in? Are you trusting in things you don't prefer? Are you trusting in definitions that no longer work for you? That's the issue. So you see, it isn't a matter of having to learn how to trust. You already do that beautifully, flawlessly. Every single moment, you can't help yourself, you're made that way. You trust in something every single moment of existence. All you now have to do is decide and discover what are you trusting in. And if you don't prefer to trust in that idea, now you give yourself the ability to simply shift where your trust is going and reap the benefits of the replacement of the trust energy. Is this clear? That's all sometimes it will take, is simply the redefining of a concept that you have held dear to your heart for so long, thinking there is no other way to see it. Sometimes just the redefinition will open up a whole new world, a whole new life, a whole new way of living. Sometimes that's all it takes. If you allow it to be that simple, then whatever process is necessary for you to change will happen along the path of least resistance. Take as little time as possible, but whatever time it takes, cherish it. Because that time is important, because these processes are important for you to understand yourselves, enrich yourselves, appreciate yourselves, and recognize that one of the reasons why you are physical at all is to learn how to transform things in a very particular way, and to know that you are strong enough to do so, magical enough to do so, powerful enough to do so. And that by doing so, you get the reward, the feeling, the expansiveness of having done so. And this adds to your entire existence as a soul, as a consciousness. Physical reality and the limitations that it contains are not always negative. Sometimes the limitations are for a positive reason. Allow yourself to relax your definitions, and you will see that life is easy when you allow it to happen through you, instead of assuming that it only happens to you. Now then, once again, in return for your wonderful, beautiful gift of allowing us to experience you this day of your life, I ask, in what way may we be accepted?